My cup needs cleaning.
Okay, can we take our seats, please? Margaret? Can we take our seats, please? Okay, good morning, everyone. First council meeting of this calendar year. So I declare council meeting CL24/1 open and welcome everyone present. I'll start with a karakia. Whakatau mai te waiora, whakawātea mai te hinanaru, whakarite mai te tinana, kia ea ai ngā mahi. Ai. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed and the consequences of that. I have an apology from Councillor Granger. Is there any other apologies? I think we'll hear otherwise. So can I move and seconder for Councillor Granger's apology? Councillor Murray Benj, Councillor Joyce. All those in favour, please say aye. Actually, is Councillor Sol online?
He was there a moment ago.
He's here. Okay, right. Thank you. There are no late items. Does anyone have a declaration of interest they wish to say? No? Okay. There are no public excluded items, and so we'll move to public forum, where I have noted down Richard Coles to speak on his submission to Plan Change 92. So, Mr. Coles, if you'd like to come up the front and just press the microphone button and you'll be live.
Thanks very much. Submission was on behalf of Kiwi Green New Zealand Limited, and the submission point was in respect of 21 Francis Road in support of the industrial zoning. Craig Lemon, Director of Kiwi Greens, asked me to present to you today just to confirm that on behalf of the Kiwi Greens landowner that they support the industrial zoning. And recognise that obviously there are other submissions that have been presented with differing views. But obviously the future urban growth option is probably not one that's supported by Kiwi Green.
Thank you.
I've got a letter here just outlining that, if that could be tabled.
I think that's been what's been circulated to the councillors online, and I think it's tabled in the agenda. So thank you for that. Are there any questions of Mr. Coles? Councillor Murray Benj.
So what was it that you were wanting that we have the decision recommendation is that you're opposed to?
Yeah, so the Commissioner's recommendation is recommended future urban zoning for 21 Francis.
You think that should be let go now?
The plan change was promoting industrial zoning for the site, and that's what the Kiwi Green New Zealand are wanting for the site, is industrial zoning to apply.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Daly.
Yeah, I'm just interested, Kiwi Green, had they been considering some sort of industrial development themselves, or just think it's a appropriate place and for that what was proposed in the first place?
Yeah, obviously they're into kiwi fruit and wheat storage, warehousing, diversifying a portfolio of commercial industrial buildings within throughout the Western Bay plenty. So they thought it was a good site. Didn't really want it to be left in the future urban hiatus. Yeah.
And there was no concerns about the size. It would be enough size to do what you were planning, thought might be appropriate.
Yeah, it's 4 hectares in size. Yeah, so larger buildings, quite clean in terms of stormwater and landscapes facing Francis Road. Yeah.
Councillor Henry.
And this may be in notes, but just a quick question. When did they purchase the property?
Oh, I don't know, but it was several years ago, I think.
Several years ago.
Yeah.
And they knew then, that's why they did it.
Yes.
Okay, I don't see any further questions, so thank you, Mr. Coles, and I
Thank you.
appreciate your attendance
Thanks a lot.
today. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
Okay, councillors, so we'll move on to the minutes for receipt, starting with item 9.1 on page 8, which is the minutes of the Makatu Community Board meeting on 28th of November last year. Call for a mover and seconder to receive those, please. Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour, Councillor Henry. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Item 10.1 on page 20, minutes of the Strategy and Policy Committee meeting on 9th of November. I shall move to receive those, or to confirm as true and correct. Can I have a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Minutes of the council meeting on the 14th of December on page 29. Now, this has got a little bit more complicated, so councillors will have noted the amendments to that, which were circulated via a track change version and a final version, which are tabled items 2 and 3. So I would like to move that those be adopted in the true and correct record. Can I have a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour. Any comment? No. I'll put that. All in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Minutes of the Te Ihi o Te Otawaka o Te Arawa meeting on 10th of November on page 48. Mover and seconder for those, please. Councillor Crawford. Aye. Councillor Daly. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. So moving on to our reports, item 12.1 on page 55 is the Tourism Bay of Plenty draft statement of intent. So here we have Jodie Rickard from our staff to introduce this. We also have Oscar Nathan and I think there's maybe Richard on hand, but I'm not sure he's here. But oh dear, that's a shame. So Oscar, Jodie, the floor is yours.
Morning, elected members. So this report is to present to you the draft statement of intent for Tourism Bay of Plenty. The statement of intent is for the next 3 years, but largely covers year one. As you know, we do, Tourism Bay of Plenty do prepare a statement of intent every year, which covers the next 3 years, so it's always regularly updated. The process is that council prepares a letter of expectation, which we give to Tourism Bay of Plenty, and then they reflect those priorities in their draft statement of intent. They present that statement of intent to you, which is what they're doing today, and elected members can provide further feedback, which Tourism Bay of Plenty will then consider before bringing back to you the final statement of intent. So today's meeting is for that, considering the draft statement of intent and any feedback that you have on that. I'll just hand over to Oscar to give a bit of an outline of the work that's planned for the next year.
Kia ora tātou. Thank you, Jodie, for this opportunity. So I take it everyone's obviously got the statement of intent and the intentions there. What has been happening over summer has been a very busy one in respect to cruise. We've topped out at, I think the season will finish at about 110 by the time we get to the end in terms of cruise ship visitations. Our push with Western Bay operators in particular for the second season since COVID is going well, probably spearheaded by Graham Crossman in terms of a lot of the work and effort he does to sort of distribute visitation across the bay. So in that regard, we've also got a big study going on with cruise in respect to looking at the future opportunities for the whole district, because it is a big, somewhat elephant in the room, with the port being one of the biggest businesses in the country and definitely in the region. Where does cruise fit into that, and what is the future for cruise? So that's a big one for us. I've taken liberty, as I sometimes do, to sort of pamphlet drop in front of you. So hopefully you've all got a copy of the Flavours of Plenty program. That was only launched last week, so it's hot off the press, literally, and we're really happy to say that we've gone from year one, year two, this year is year three, In the second year, last year, we picked up 2 awards at the New Zealand Event Awards. One was Best Lifestyle Event and the other was Best Local Government Event. And so that is just growing and growing. And then after we complete this year's instalment, we will then look at doing a 3-year sort of progress report. But essentially the intentions of what we wanted to achieve are being achieved and in some places exceeded in terms of the distribution of one of the 4 key pillars that we identified in our destination management plan, which was horticultural provenance, and how do we cross horticultural provenance over with the visitor sector and actually put something sustainable in. So whilst my team love the bright colours and everyone gets excited about the festival, which is about a 10-day window, I'm more excited about the platform that is Flavours of Plenty, which is the ecosystem that joins the growers, the suppliers, producers, restaurateurs, and then food critics and lovers. Somewhere in that pamphlet, sorry, I don't know the page number, but somewhere in there's a very nifty little map that shows you the distribution of where the events are across the Bay of Plenty, and you'll see that we're really starting to grow that. So it's a key platform for us. That's going well. The other one is where I think we've hit our straps quite well now around the cycle trails and the brochures there and the updating mechanism that works. So as per this time of year, we've generally run out of brochures because we load up ahead of season and then we defer everybody to online and digital. And then as councils, either yourselves or TCC or Whakatane, as we've included them across the total remit this year, as they develop or announce or launch or repair particular cycleways, we then update that digitally and then that's ready to go for the next season's produce. So in that regard, things are going really well. There's one probably thing I'd like to draw your attention to, and I'll send it through Jody. Again, we've just completed that. We came hot off a board meeting yesterday. We've now got a very interactive dashboard of total data and insights around tourism available on our website. We've been working hard on that. It is difficult, I don't need to tell you that, in terms of with the incoming government and some of the changes and the tightening of various things. One of the things that's hitting us nationally is data sets. So between Stats and MB, they just seem to sort of drop the ball on particular data sets that the industry's been relying on for quite a while. So it's timely that we've actually picked up some other opportunities to replicate those data sets with other regional tourism organisations like us. And the timing's actually perfect because they stopped 2 months ago, they stopped the MRTEs, which is the electronic card spend regionally. So we've now got another way of measuring there. So yeah, happy to take the report as read and obviously alongside Jody answer any questions or things that you may have through the chair.
Thank you. I've Tracy, Councillor Cox, about to ask a question, but I'll just ask first of all, in relation to Tauranga City Council, they said they had their feedback on your statement of intent on the 12th. And I was just wondering what that feedback was from that meeting.
Yep, just got that just before our board meeting too. So it was a succinct letter in respect to, there was a couple of things in there. As we are walking through the process of exploring what a sub-regional branding exercise might look like. So they've highlighted that as something that they'd like us to sort of continue with and have a look at. That in a way is quite separate funding to any of the BAU that we've got. So I don't come to this council and say something I don't say to the other council. So essentially you fund us as a specialist organisation to deliver on visitor marketing and destination services over and above anything else that sort of comes in, particularly if it's project orientated. Then we work on that, but we also price that out in terms of what that looks like. And a branding is a big thing. So there was that through the chair. And then a couple of the other things were similar to Flavours of Plenty, is what's our progression plan with Flavours of Plenty and where are we going with that. I'm happy to actually share, sorry I didn't bring that letter, I'm happy to share that email through Jody. It's all publicly available, I'd imagine. The other thing was for us to explore transparency in terms of, I think that's just a standard thing around sort of reporting, which to be honest, I think we do pretty well, but we're just going to tighten that up a little bit more and make a lot of our information a lot more publicly available. I think that's just a theme going through. And there were one or two others that I can't remember at the moment, but there was nothing major in there, Mr. Mayor. There was pretty much just feedback. Yeah. They were happy overall. I'm pretty safe to say that, I think.
Thank you, appreciate that. So I've got Councillor Cogshead.
Thanks, Oscar. Just a couple of questions. Firstly, and this might come back to your comment about data set and MB information, but do we know what revenue this area gains from tourism and what percentage of our local GDP is that? And second question is tarnished frocks and divas. Is that still something that happens now or not?
It's, I know it went into a hiatus, particularly driven by COVID. So just answering that second one, we've got a discussion. I'm also working quite closely with Tauranga City Council's events team on a sort of a clearer strategy. And I know that is in that discussion because it is quite iconic. But my understanding at the moment is it's still in abeyance for the time being whilst they're trying to sort out a few things. To answer your first question, I will get the link through to our new data sets. That does provide a degree of that information. That's what we've been working hard on. So ever since I started, it became very apparent that we needed to be clear with Western Bay, Tauranga City Council, and to a degree Whakatane in terms of what the impact is on each of those stakeholder communities. So the new data sets we've got do a deep dive. So at the top of the page there's actually some tabs that you can actually go to Western Bay specifically and look at, literally we only launched it yesterday, so I'm not sort of really clear on the measurements, but we do have a page at the back that sort of clarifies where we get the data sets from and how we're accessing them. And that also includes what we've done is also in line with about 60% of other regional tourism organisations in the country. So we've sort of made sure that we're balancing out when the government's dropping the ball. So the answer is yes. I can't give you the absolute detail, but I'll send you the link through pretty much when I get back to the office.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Henry.
Oh, right. So I'm picking up on something you'd said about when you were in here before about the title and how it is not just an event. This is you, this is us, this is what we do in the Bay. We've got flavours. And one of my younger couple friends of mine are involved with that, the Kari avocado tours people, very enthusiastic guy.
Yep.
So he was trying to explain it to me and how the longevity of that over, years you're going to develop. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that, or?
In terms of flavours?
No, how it's not just an event.
Oh no, absolutely. So the
theme you're gonna.
Yeah. So and that's probably where I get what you mean. So Flavours of Plenty, most people associate it simply with the festival.
Yeah.
When I talk about Flavours of Plenty, I'm actually looking at the platform of our horticultural provenance across the region. So it's sort of like an iceberg. Underneath the water is, as I mentioned, all our agricultural IP, everybody that grows, that distributes, that services, that connects. The festival's sort of the part where we wave the flag and celebrate. And I think the other thing that will grow over years going forward as a platform is we're actually already starting to, some of them are included in here, but off the program itself that people can purchase and buy. And just to remind everyone, we pass it forward. So we make no money from Flavours. That goes all to your businesses, goes all to your operators. We don't even clip a ticket. So that's our role, is to sort of encourage economic development through that. Outside of the program of Flavours, we also encourage and assist in workshops and getting people in. So we've had the likes of Sarah Meikle, that was the architect behind Wellington on a Plate. We've had her in a couple of times talking to our foodie guys. We've invited Ben Bailey when he's not doing his promotions and his production. I think he's into his third season. He's a local boy that's got a lot of experience to share with people. So yeah, we're really trying to strengthen that ecosystem. So the goal in 3 years, 5 years time is that as much as what people know about Fork and Hawke's Bay or Wellington on a Plate, they will start resonating this region as a horticultural provenance region.
All right, Councillor Joyce.
Just looking at the financials, funny enough.
Yeah, I knew that.
So you're budgeting for a 30% increase in contribution from the Western Bay of Plenty District Council. I don't remember that in our long-term plan discussion so far. Is that something that's, Jody might be able to help with that? Are we really increasing? I know there's some talk about some projects, but a 30% increase seems, I don't remember that in the long-term plan so far.
Yeah, so through you, Mr Chair, we have had those first initial discussions on the economic development activity, and there was some feedback given from elected members around that. But as part of those discussions, what we discussed, and this is going back to the community committee workshops that we had last year as well, was the development of those local tourism opportunities in Makatu and Waihi Beach, and looking to extend those further. As well as the Tech Park Strategic Plan Review. Now, all of that is over and above the BAU for Tourism Bay of Plenty. So essentially what we had factored in was some dollars to start to implement the local tourism opportunities work in Makatu and the local tourism opportunities work in Te Puke. So it's kind of project specific work there. And yeah, just on the back of that, I think what Oscar has said about Flavours of Plenty is really relevant. One of the tourism opportunities for Makatu is the Kamoana Festival, and looking at how, which is not operating at the moment, but looking at how that might be able to grow off the back of something like Flavours of Plenty. So a lot of work to be done on that. If you want the work done, you've got to fund it.
Subject to long-term plan. Okay. Bay of Plenty Regional Council, Oscar? Nothing? Is that, I think
No, there's Councillor, there is some work going on there. So we're coming to the end of their investment in the Green Room program, which has been hugely successful. So over 3 years, we committed to getting 100 operators across the region on that regenerative journey. We'll probably crack that at about, we'll exceed that target, which is what I've been driving the team to do. And we had an update yesterday. It looks like we're definitely going to do that. So they're actually considering some other options, and I suppose that's the issue outside of yourselves and TCC as our shareholders. I'm constantly working with the likes of regional council. I'm just not in a position between now and the end of the year to say that, but I'm highly expectant of support on other programs. TCC's also got some sustainability programs that we're sort of come out of a different pocket that we're looking at as well. And the other one is I'm also having quite serious conversations with the CEO of Whakatane Council and the new CEO of Ngāti Awa, Ruben, in terms of opportunities there that we could assist that Whakatane end with one or two big projects that are more around working with me and my team's IP around helping them, that would bring in more funding. So not necessarily projects that don't help the bottom line, but will help us.
The punchline, of course, is that from next year, you're projecting deficits of around $600,000 a year.
Yeah.
And as you also put out in the notes, that's probably not sustainable.
No, it's not.
So what's your plan?
Yeah. Well, knew that you would ask that question. So yesterday at the board meeting, we made it very clear. So we've gone through a whole bunch of things. The board's meeting with me next month, and we're going to do sort of a budget reforecast and looking at what is likely coming in, where we're at. There's a few things that will manifest between now and the next 5 months. And I suppose like everybody, which is where I'm attuned to exactly the challenges you're facing, as is every other council, we, like everyone else, will start tightening our belt and looking at what provision of service we might have to sort of shave off a little bit in terms of what that might look like. We're not talking dire straits or anything like that. It's pretty much just being really pragmatic about, we would usually try to keep the profile of the bay. We would invest in a lot of things in a sort of low season campaign and those sorts of things. We might have to sort of cut back a little bit on some of those things. So it's just being pragmatic. If you know your business, you know where you can cut the cloth a little bit. Yeah.
I mean, it's up to 18-20% of your expenditure. So
yeah, I know there's some significant stuff there. Yeah,
stuff you need to do.
Yeah.
And you're aware of it. That's great. But as we're shareholders, I guess we should ask.
Yeah, we'll be sort of keeping. Yeah, we'll be keeping Jody in the loop, and obviously through you. Yeah.
Thank you, Oscar. So if there's no further questions, we've got 5 recommendations there. I'll look for a mover and seconder for those, please. Councillor Henry, Councillor Daly. Any debate on this? Councillor Murray Binge.
to speak to it, the recommendations. Could I say, Oscar, since you have been appointed to lead this organisation, you have been without fault, and it's been really quite exciting to understand your reach that you've been able to achieve. And I note what Councillor Joyce has said about the funding of it. That will always be pressure for all of us. But at this stage, the fact that you've reached out to the east, Graham Crossman, for example, and further out to the west, it's good from Western Bay's point of view. And it's a great shame we're not a unitary authority, that we could have more of that regional council income to justify the work that they don't do and we could do. So I just think, congratulate you and just keep the pressure on, because 30% increase we can't afford, and nor can you. And so good luck.
Thank you. Cool.
Councillor Henry, did you have your hand? No, okay. Okay, Councillor Dale and Councillor Joyce.
Yes, I'd support the receipt of the draft plan, statement of intent, sorry, and very much agree with everything Margaret has just elaborated on. It's been real change. We've really noticed the change in focus from Tourism Bay of Plenty, especially since you've come on board, Oscar. I know I've said this before, but you know, every time you come here, you come with some new initiatives, and no matter what the outcome of our long-term plan and funding decisions, the fact that, you know, we've put in here, subject to funding, more focus on Te Puke and Karikari tourism development. I'd really welcome that, and whatever you can do with whatever budgets you can pull together, then I hope you don't lose sight of that, and maintain that focus for the Western Bay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Daly. Councillor Joyce.
Yeah, I mean, I would just stress that me looking at the numbers doesn't underestimate the important work you're doing. I take the point from those that have been here longer than me that there's been a significant change, and that's great. It is all about ROI, obviously, return on investment. So, you know, more power to you. I would notice with the festival, found the map, that Western Ward or Karikari Waihi Beach Ward, 6 people participating. Kaimai Ward only 4, and Te Puke, Makatu only 3. So it seems that in the West we're getting on board with your program.
I'm happy if you want to create a challenge. That's great. That's fantastic.
Councillor Sol.
Thank you, sir. Basically, again, Oscar, you've done a wonderful job. It's been a breath of fresh air to us, and so on. And I do appreciate the effort. I'm being a bit parochial here for Waihi Beach and that northern Karikari Waihi Beach area, as I can constantly now point out here in the chamber. Waihi Beach lives off visitors. That's our economic driver. It's not kiwi fruit or avocados, or dairying. It's visitors, and we've got to improve the experience for those people. And I look forward to seeing more coming from you one way or another. I feel sorry for you, actually, that you've landed at such a tough financial time, because I believe it would be an incredible thing happening now if we weren't being so, I guess, watching every penny like you will be. But good luck, and thank you for the work.
Thank you.
Okay, so I see you want your right to reply, or okay, please go ahead, Councillor Henry. Yep.
Yeah, so I too have been very impressed since you've come on board, and I think you're doing amazing work. You are a person that has. Why am I not doing this properly? You have your nose, your nose and ears to the ground. You are very well connected within the community. You are working piece by piece, going through the community, tying all the webby bits all together. So we end up being a united area where one person will enter in through the gates of Karikari, the entrance to the Bay of Plenty, and exit from Te Puke. and vice versa, and they'll travel through the bay and have a wonderful experience and go away singing our praises. And because of that consistency in the tourism area, that you're weaving all that together. I mean, that's probably a big master plan of yours, but that's what I'm seeing. So well done, you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Henry. So with that, I shall put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried.
Thank
Before you
you.
head off, I'm just saying I'm really looking forward to the Flavours of Plenty Festival and attending some of those events. So well done, and I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, so moving on to page 80, item 12.2, which is the proposal to lease Waihi Beach Lifeguard Reserve. And we've got Peter Watson to lead us through this one, and I think we have some speakers as well. So, Peter, why don't you lead us off on this one?
Thank you, Your Worship. So just have Donald from the Surf Lifesaving Club here, who's attended today, so made it through the traffic. Yeah. Yeah. So you may recall on the 14th of December, there was a report that was presented to Council following the public consultation on a proposed leased area at the southern end of Bowen Town Domain next to the Coast Guard area, and went through a process, and there was lots of ideas came back out there, and was agreed at that meeting on the 14th to let the report lay on the table and allow the community and all relevant parts of the community to go back and work together and come up with a solution, and that solution is what's before you today as a recommended option. It's Site 2 version 3, I think it is, so it's had a bit of reiteration, but I think that's how good planning occurs. You get there in the end. Yeah. So I think I'm supportive of it from the council reserve land management perspective type thing. Like to point out that I don't think there's any need for council to go back for any further public consultation, because the original proposal that went out did include option 2, and this is pretty much just a slight modified version of option 2. So the intent of having a lifeguard service building there, I think, is not lost on the community, and I don't think there's any further need to that. So you could go forth and make a recommendation today.
Thank you, Peter.
I guess everything else speaks for itself in the report. Yeah, 100%.
Thank you, Peter. Can I just ask, Donna, are you wanting to speak, or are you just going to answer questions, or what's your preference?
Sorry, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I think we've proven need, and now we're down to just that location and working with the other stakeholders. So I'm really here to answer questions, but I do have images if you need it.
Okay, Councillor Joyce.
So I think you've already answered the question, but are you happy, Donna, with the outcome?
Yes. It was a very good exercise to go through, where we actually pegged out all of the sites, and then when all the stakeholders arrived, realised we had to eliminate 2 or 3 of them immediately. You could tell that you're going to put us at risk over the flood zones, and the future could be difficult for us. So yeah, at the end of the meeting, we are very happy. Yes.
Peter, I welcome your comments about the process. It was and your praise for it. Is there some learning points for us in the future, do you think, about how we could have done this differently in the beginning?
I guess my experience is that at some point in time you need that engagement. It's whether how much you do that up front before it comes to council's table, or how much happens after. It's like concept planning. We started a thing with Tahawai the other day, but there's lots of opportunities, lots of touch points of people to be involved. And it's as long as people are aware of those opportunities, I think is a quite important thing for the process. But either way, I think we ended up out of this process with a good outcome, and we got there in the end. But it's always trying to have that vision of where we want to get to, and yeah, there will be different views about how we get there, but the focus is on getting there. That's what we're trying to do.
And if I could comment on that, because we're volunteers, so we live in a bit of a different space. Like I've talked Derry Kells this morning on my way here. So we live in a different space. So I think that the guidance that we've had from Peter has been exceptional. If I knew, what I knew way back 3 years ago, that if there was a process template that said, right, community, fill out these, pull your stakeholders, get their initial thoughts on the project, because I feel like Pete's been the conductor. trying to bring all of it together, when in fact, if I'd known what I've known, I would have just gone the other way around, got everything detailed and motions made by all those organisations and then given it to council. Yeah.
Very valuable feedback, thank you.
Thank you. Can I just ask Peter, explain the objection from the Coast Guard and why they're not completely happy at the moment, but and what's your view on that?
There was just with the Coast Guard representative, I guess, expressed a little bit of frustration in the process and amount of meetings that occurred. Did raise some issues about potential traffic congestion. I've had the roading engineers look at that. In 2021, that road was last surveyed. The average daily vehicle use was 148 vehicles a day. So I think that perceived issue won't be a real issue when it comes to it. The busy time is busy season up there. When it gets busy, there's so many cars and stuff around that kind of manages the traffic anyway through speed, and it's a very low speed environment there. So we don't think that's going to be as big an issue it may have been perceived to be. And the Coast Guard still, in this proposal, the good thing for them is they get that area of parking out the back, which has always been something they've been bottom line on, and so that I think they're happy in that respect there. Yeah, but I think that we can all move forward now. There's good majority support in this community.
Yeah, and if I can just reiterate that as part of our own emergency services, we have our own, let's call it traffic management, because we're trying to keep the public away. And the rest of the time we're actually on the water. So once we launch our boats, and same with Coast Guard, all you've got is one vehicle that had the boats on it, and we only have 3 lifeguards on patrol at any one time in that region. So there's 3 vehicles and possibly a supervisor. So it's not actually a location that we are generating traffic. It's just us on duty. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Henry.
Few questions I have. When we were out there and you had all the sticks around and we were moving, that's what we're talking about. That's pretty much that.
Yeah, so you know that site that was one
on the
of
high. Yeah. So at that point, the PO Shores, who had raised a reasonable objection, they were happy with that and still happy with that.
Yeah, and they've written that they're happy with that.
Because we haven't seen them or talked to you since that day. So my concern, or not concern, but a question to you, Peter, is in the Reserve Management Act, it says that the services like driveways and things should be, used by the groups, to minimise the impact on the reserve. And we've had difficulty and still have not been able to conquer it with the lifeguard, with the Coast Guard. There's no way they would allow anyone to come into their driveway thing. So we now have 2 driveways side by side. Can you, I know it's difficult, but there wasn't anything that you could do about that, dealing with one person?
No, I don't. Well, I guess the Coast Guard have a lease over their site, so that effectively gives them a form of property rights, and they're quite entitled to say that if they don't wish other people to come over across their land, because that may affect their operations. That's totally their entitlement. They're entitled to the kind of peaceful use and enjoyment of the land that they lease off the council. But I think the solution we've come up with, and given the vehicle numbers we're talking about, I think the 2 can be compatible side by side.
I think we all decided we weren't going to push the issue any further. Yeah. Anyway, the other thing was that the Coast Guard had said that they were going to leave the area very much like it is and just use it as emergency parking. And I'm just wondering whether that's going to cause problems. People don't park in there now. The public don't go in there and park. That's not going to cause more problems for them with their emergency parking.
I don't believe so. As I explained to the President of the Coast Guard, is that to get to that area at the back, they must cross your lease land, and you have the right to manage your lease land access control, whether you want to do a bar gate there or whatever you want to do. Your call, yeah.
It is good that they'll leave it.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah,
not doing it now.
Yeah. And so they remains the ability for them to manage that themselves.
Councillor Crawford.
Yeah, just comment about the BMX track relocation. So, yeah, how did they work out? Because I saw that some people were unhappy about that being affected. So that's been resolved, and who pays for the cost of that?
Yeah, so just right back in the very initial meeting that we had here, I did put up on my presentation that we would fund a revamp of the BMX track because the overseers said that it's old fashioned. So if we're going to do work, which we've budgeted for, we've got the money already put aside, and we would do the BMX track upgrade with their consultation. Well, I don't know anything about, BMX tracks. We're going to do it when the earthworks is actually done when we start, so that the BMX tracks will be all dealt to. So by the time summer comes, it's already done and designed, and all the earthworks has been done. So it'll be done at the same time we start building.
How did you resolve the cricket issue?
The new building site puts us even further away from the cricket site, and I think Peter would confirm that Pio Shaw's sports community are happy with that change, and it doesn't impact some of those other concerns they had.
Councillor Sol.
Okay, I'm really pleased that something's sort of gelled out of this whole thing. It seems just a little bit disappointing maybe at present that there aren't two emergency type services that aren't perhaps quite getting on as well as I would like to see them, but I believe it's an opportunity now for you moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's a misconception.
Yeah.
But totally. We train regularly together. We are tasked together. We talk about the gear that we're going to use that is overlapping. So we're engaged with the Coast Guard probably 2-3 times a month. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with our relationship. What has happened though, they've got a particular goals about their organisation, and we have as well. And there's been a lot of community confusion that people think we are the Coast Guard. So yeah, I've had to write a lot of communication. So what we do is the 400 metres sort of out to a K along the whole coastline, 75 Ks of it, and we jump in the water. Okay, basically that's what we do. Where Coast Guard is looking after the section from that sort of 500 to a K, then all the way out. Okay, and so yes, we get tasked around rocks because we have the boats that can bounce around the rocks. We can go up to swimmers who can jump in and rescue people. That's not the role of the Coast Guard. So I think that the community's got really confused. They don't have a first aid room. They don't carry, like in all their vehicles, oxygen, defibs. All our pre-emergency training is done to that level. So very different, but so complementary. We work so well together. And I wanted to make sure that the community understood that we have different goals. That doesn't mean that we have any relationship issues. Yeah.
And the other side, and it's being a little bit unfair, Peter, but that's an average. The issues can happen at any time, obviously emergencies and so on, but we have peak seasons which would have traffic flows way greater than that. It's just being sure, I'm really pleased, don't get me wrong about this, that we manage, or how are we going to deal with, I think, things if they get to a point where traffic management is an issue on that strip of road. Are we able to be nimble enough to fix the problems, I guess is really what the question is, so that people can access and get about their emergency operations.
So, Mr. Chairman, to answer that question, and Deputy Chair may wish to chip in here as well, but we have the after-hours security, or the contract that manages all of the noise complaints, the dog control and the freedom camping, but also do parking up there over that seasonal period. So if there's any issues about people parking across driveways and doing stuff like that, we have got the ability to send some resource down there to administer and police that. And once you do that in a small community like that, that word gets out pretty quick. So we can manage it through that process.
Thank you.
And to keep in mind that our emergencies aren't actually at the hub. If we like the 4 that we've done recently at Bowen Town, we've been much more around the Anzac Bay. So all the fire engines, or the police, or Coast Guard, we're all left that area. So I don't see that as too much of a concern, and if it was, we wouldn't be driving that volume of traffic. It's not going to come out of us being there. It'll be wherever the location of the emergency is.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Donna. So I think we need to move on to recommendations. I'm happy to move 1, 2, 3, and 5. That is to grant the lease. Councillor Joyce, second. Is there any debate on that? Further debate? Councillor Joyce.
I just wanted to say thank you to all those involved, and I appreciate, Peter, your comments before, particularly, and Donna. I'd also like to mention a few other people that have worked hard on this in the background, and that's the community board. Ross, in particular, has worked hard to bring people together, the chairman, and he also tells me Wayne, the newest member, Wayne Stevenson, also played quite a role as well. And of course, we shouldn't forget Rose.
Fox.
I mean, it's voluntary stuff that she's doing, and it's her business. So, Rose Fox has done a good job. I think there are some learning points from this. I mean, don't forget, it was a bunch of councillors who stopped it right at the end, and it probably shouldn't have come to that. But looking forward, let's learn from this, and let's, as you say, I do like your idea of a template, Donna.
No, I'd love that.
I know it's work to do when we've already got too much work to do, Peter, but it could make things easier, invest a bit ahead of time and then. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think so.
And I also understand Sam's concern, when the police turn up, I mean, as an ex-journalist, I know, and Richard's been involved in emergency service, when the police turn up, the ambulance turns up, the fire brigade turns up, there can be a bit of a crush. But this is, normally an extremist. You all turn up in numbers, Richard. But I think this is a good outcome, and it's a good community-led outcome. And congratulations to all those involved.
It's been a good exercise.
Councillor Thwaites and then Councillor Henry.
Thank you. I fully support this outcome. I was one of the councillors who paused it, didn't stop it. I paused it at the time because it wasn't right. I visited the site 4 or 5 times over the holidays, spoke to numerous people who are using that site, and I knew there was a better way, and I'm glad the better way is found. So congratulations.
Thank you. Councillor Henry.
Well, I concur with everything that Rodney had said, and it did actually cause a little bit of pressure to us as councillors, but we got through all that, and thank you, Peter, for continuing to work with the community and the outcome that you've got today. But I think the congratulations for me really goes to you, Donna.
Perseverance.
Yes, perseverance, and always with a smile on your face.
Yeah, look, we're all
and you
got the
must
same
be very
face.
pleased to come to this day.
Yeah, very.
And you've worked very hard, and thank you for what you've done.
So
Really
we
appreciate
feel
it.
our services are getting more demanded all the time now. So this is a really part of our big strategy to continue to offer things for the next.
And I know someone who can paint a lovely mural on that building for you when you drive in.
Leave it to the arts policy.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got Councillor Murray Benj and Councillor Sol, but I would just note we've had 3 speakers in favour, and I don't think we all need to go around the room about how we agree with it. So please keep your comments brief, and if you've got a dissenting view, that's fine, but I don't think we all need to say we approve. Thank you.
Thank you for the caution, sir. I'm just so pleased that you came in today, Donna, because it's the only opportunity we've had publicly to say thank you to you for the leadership you give to all those young people out there in Waihi Beach. And the service that you've got going is something that's to be admired. So, sir, I'm grateful that you gave us the little opportunity to say thank you and wish you well, and your perseverance and the leadership that our leader of reserves has given also, I think, is really splendid. So thank you, Peter and Donna.
That's what collaboration does.
Councillor Sol.
Yes, again, actually, thank you so much for persevering. You've taken it and worked with it. You've been flexible. Great stuff. And I guess perhaps towards the future, thanks for the lives that this is likely to save.
Have a big
I
impact.
support the motion.
Great. Well, it's good to see such support, but I'll put the motion formally. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much, Donna.
Thank you. Can I just take 30 seconds of your time, though, just to say thank you once again. One of the things has been the collaboration, and it's really important to us. And I also think that you've had the discussions around driving traffic to our region. And a safe beach is a good way to drive traffic. So that's good. And I would also just like to commend the team with that, Peter. Our beach access, the ability for us to get speedy boats onto the beach, having all that work that's been done to change that sort of narrative in front of the club, Island View and Bowen Town. I can't tell you how impressive that has made the operation of our organisation. It's made a huge change. So thank you so much. That definitely has made our lives easier, which means we're faster. And I think that's secure. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Awesome, Fred. Okay, so we'll move on now to item 12.3, which is page 88, which is the Plan Change 92 and notice of requirement for Mokura Active Reserve. So if I invite Natalie to introduce this one, please.
Thank you. Good morning. I've just got here with me Tony Clow, who is over a lot of the technical information relating to this piece of work, should there be any questions relating to that. But look, I just really want to recognise that what is in front of us is been quite a considerable investment in time of work. This is the recommendations from the Independent Hearings Panel on Plan Change 92 and the Notice of Requirement for a Mokura Active Reserve. The planning processes came to us via the RMA Amendments Act in 2021, which saw the introduction of medium density residential standards across our two urban areas of Mokoroa and Te Poke. And while we already had some work underway at the time for Mokoroa and unlocking stage 3, this really put a slightly different emphasis in picking up Te Poke as well. But the plan change in particular will see that unlocking of that urban stage 3 area in Mokoroa and some greenfield area in Te Poke as well. Associated with that is the infrastructure projects, particularly in Mokoroa, around the roading and the Mokoroa Road roundabout. At the moment, we appreciate that there are some signal changes from government and continue to win a space around RM reform, but we very much have no change to this legislation. It's still in play and we are still tracking and needing to make decisions by 1st of March in accordance with that legislation. So the panel recommendations in front of us have taken into account, obviously, Council's position and those of submitters, and have worked through those matters through hearings in September, and have, on the most part, landed with recommendations consistent with where Council officers resolved as well. There are some areas of difference. Appreciate that there's a lot to these processes. There's a lot of detail sitting within these reports. At that high level, the key differences that we note are that industrial zoning in Mokoroa, which was raised through the public forum this morning from Richard Coles. There's also changes around some provisions, setback provisions in relation to vibration, so introducing some rules there that we otherwise hadn't anticipated, and also activity status changes around roundabouts in Mokoroa. That's more into the consenting detail of process. So just really wanting to, I guess, highlight that this decision-making process is a little the same as a plan change process normally, but a little bit different in that where Council is minded to accept the recommendations made by the Independent Hearing Panel, we then have the ability to progress through and make those rules operative. There isn't an appeal process. Where Council chooses to an alternative recommendation to reject any of the recommendations made by the panel, those will need to be passed to the Minister to make a final decision. So that's where there's a bit of a difference there than a standard Schedule 1 process. And not to lose the notice of requirement on this as well, because the notice of requirement in this case very much ran and sat alongside the planning matters we were considering on Mokoroa. The Independent Hearings Panel have considered that and think it is appropriate to confirm that notice of requirement, subject to some modified conditions, which are sitting within the report. and the independent hearings panel very much offering that independence in that sense, where it's a council reserve that has been proposed and council is a decision maker as well. So really just I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Natalie. So I'll open the floor for questions. Councillor Joyce.
Thank you for that, and I now understand the very tight deadline that we're working to, which is next week. I don't see in the report that the Commission has considered overall whether this is a good idea, and I sort of understand why, because we weren't given a choice. So is there somewhere in there that we're actually we've looked at whether this overall is a good idea?
No, I think you're right in saying that we had no choice, and therefore they moved on and just addressed the specific submissions and recommendations that they needed to make.
Okay. You've outlined the process if we do say no today. Is there any legal risk, or is it just a matter of leaving it to the Minister? I mean, I hear what you're saying about the political noise, and of course the legislation is still there at the moment.
It does fall to the Minister to ultimately make that decision. I think the key points there are just around what might lead you to making a changed recommendation. There are some provisions within the legislation around ensuring that that's based on the same information that was available to the hearings panel. So there are some finer points there, I guess, insofar as being clear on that decision making.
We're about to do spatial plans in Te Puke. Yeah, bearing in mind if we pass this and it's a brand new district plan change, how easy is it to revisit these issues as we go through our spatial plan if we find we're not happy with this?
I think that there will certainly be an opportunity through the spatial plan to pick up plan change matters and consider them on top of what is sitting here now for Te Puke. I think we will need to understand what the situation is with legislation at that time and whether it has changed or not. But there are certainly some matters that do sit here with legislation and are required of us. So there will be some areas that we will need to hold.
I mean, I guess another way of asking is, can a spatial plan override this? I'm guessing the answer is, but I've just got to shake of the head. I mean, I know the answer is probably obvious, but just to understand if we do this, how easy is it to change it? And it sounds like spatial plan won't allow that to change.
So to give effect to a spatial plan from a zoning or an activity or rule perspective, we would have to do a subsequent district plan change depending on the legislation of the day, but the spatial plan itself wouldn't change what's in the district plan. It's more of a conceptual process that would then feed into other processes like district plan or also long-term plan from a budget and funding perspective of what's contemplated in the spatial plan.
I've got a couple more if I may, because it's quite important.
Go on then.
Sorry, it's and I apologise that I wasn't here for the workshop in beginning of February, but I couldn't be in the country. This plan change seems to rely heavily on public transport, and it does discuss the availability of public transport and vehicle kilometres. Other than noting those concerns, I mean, I guess it's a difficult question, but what public transport expansion plans are there? Because these are areas that don't have, was there any reassurance given on future public transport plans to actually make this work?
The plan change itself, although there's some objectives and policies about what you're talking about, it doesn't go into any details about actual solutions to that extent.
Last one, I promise. Our first go at medium intensity housing in Katikati has not been wonderful. We have a subdivision with no curbside recycling because the trucks can't get in. We've had difficulty with emergency services getting in and out. I realise that the fire service did raise some submissions in this and only some were accepted. I mean, how confident are we that we'll be able to provide a full level of council service in these situations when we don't want to repeat what we've done in Katikati?
Yeah, you're right. We did have a look at the Fire and Emergency NZ submission in a lot of detail, and we had our engineers, traffic engineers, development engineers have a look at it, and they felt that on balance, the district plan and the development code already had those provisions in many years earlier, and they felt that they were still sufficient. We also had to take into account that this is a medium density plan change. There's requirements to allow a certain number of dwellings on a site, minimum densities per hectare, and if you widen your roads and access too much, then you struggle to meet those targets.
Thank you, Councillor Joyce. Councillor Coxhead.
Thank you. Actually, Councillor Joyce has probably asked a lot of the questions I had. Yes, and I appreciate the amount of work that's gone into this as well, and it wasn't something that was optional at the time. Just for my clarification, so because the new government has now announced that we do have the option of accepting this or not, we're not sure about the legal, well, there doesn't appear to be any legal, we can actually make a decision either way, is that correct?
The legislation as it stands, you can make a decision either way to accept or recommend, or reject, and that's on the recommendations. So there is the ability to obviously to step through the actual provisions and look for where you may choose to accept all or some.
So we don't have to step through each of the items, the 50 odd items?
Not individually,
no.
but obviously
And
pulling out one in particular or others as an option.
So I very much appreciate the need to build more housing, but I do have some concerns, particularly around the transport side and the ability the potential for a lot of houses or houses to be built without garages or sufficient off-street parking. And this does largely and hugely rely on a good public so that would be my concern. I have seen this at close quarters in a suburb in Auckland, quite close to town, with very good public transport infrastructure. And the houses don't have garages, they don't have garden sheds, they don't have anywhere to even keep a bike, let alone a car. And I've seen what that's done to the neighbourhoods. And I would be more comfortable knowing that we had some control over that kind of outcome, because what I would really want to see with extending our housing, obviously, is to make sure that we are building houses that people are proud to live in, and people are safe and communities will prosper. So I don't want to see this happen at any cost, my personal view.
I think I'll just comment, Councillor Coxhead, that the ability for us to require parking is, we don't have that now, and this is not going to change that. So I take your point, and we have heard before in workshops and elsewhere that developers do still provide parking, because to not do so makes their houses unsaleable or more difficult to sell, shall we say. So there is, the reality is it is still provided, but we can't force that. I think it's also worth pointing out that with TNL2 hopefully on its way, public transport should then become much more viable in terms of frequent bus services to Tauranga. But that's maybe a few years off. Anyway, did you want to comment any further, Natalie, or have I covered that?
I think that was well covered.
Thank you. Okay, I have Councillor Murray-Benge and then Councillor Henry.
I note, sir, that the NZTA made submissions to the hearing and said it would be 2048 before we get a decent interchange of State Highway 2 into Omokoroa. But that's not my question. My question is, the previous government made decisions that said we don't need to have garages, people don't need to have space to park a car, because philosophically we believe everybody in the world can catch a bus. That's the philosophy that's been...
Councillor Murray-Benge, that's not what they said.
Well, it's near enough.
Let's not exaggerate.
And so they've had a previous minister directing what we can and can't do. If, for example, we decline this decision and it goes back to the minister, we could argue, in fact, that we need better better decisions from central government as to what we can allow within our communities. Is that fair comment, Tony?
Can I just say, I don't think we can have questions where it's a statement and then you say, is that a fair comment? I think that's not really a genuine question.
What I said was what we could do. Do staff feel that we have the power to argue the fact on what the community's needs are better than what they've driven us so far?
Yeah, I think I'd just reiterate the point made earlier that the minimum car parking isn't a matter within this plan change as such, and it is a change that has been made already, so this plan change wouldn't alter that. So it doesn't sit within us and within the recommendations.
Okay, Councillor Henry.
So just following on from that, is that the medium density ruling about the parking then? Is it within that legislation?
Within the National Policy Statement for Urban Development, yes.
And to say that hopefully we might get this, is how we got into this situation anyway. We've had Omokoroa as a growth area and we didn't get anything to go with it. And we still haven't got it. So, I think it's fair comment that's been said around here. So my question is really going back before I became a councillor and bearing in mind what the submitter here had talked about, because I always believed that Francis Drive area was going to be a commercial zone or whatever, where those sort of businesses could develop. So somewhere along the line that's changed. So my question is, people do buy property on the whim, the idea that this might happen. What I'm trying to establish is was that established and now we're changing it. Francis Road was a commercial area under the, that being a, more housing and and now this plan's changing it so these people can't do what they thought they were going to do.
Under the operative district plan, it's future urban, and it's always been anticipated to be industrial. Is that what you mean, rather than commercial? Yeah. So we proposed industrial zoning for all that land along Francis Road, to the west of Francis Road and to the east. It's the panel's recommendation for that area west of the existing Francis Road intersection with the State Highway to stay future urban. So they were concerned that we hadn't done enough consultation with the landowners on the other side of the road in the medium density area. And also they were worried about that the definition of industry would allow any sort of industry to occur in that area, heavy dismantling, manufacturing, engineering workshops and things like that. And that was one thing they mentioned, that they were concerned that our rules as they were at the moment would allow that to happen. And they were concerned that there wasn't scope to have light industrial rules within there, which we have in other parts of Omokoroa.
That's that point when it came out. It was there, but it came out because of that.
Okay, Margaret, I think you've had your questions. Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour, you have some questions? No, not at this point. Okay, right. Councillor Sol.
This actually still does concern me as well. I'm just not sure that this is entirely a great decision to be making at this time with the changes in government, etc. But my questions basically, I guess, refer to the overall view of Omokoroa is to be a satellite town, not to be a place that is where people can live and work as in industry. Is that really where we're going with this? And if that's the case, I guess I'm asking again, as I have others, where is the public transport and when is it coming?
So the provision of public transport is a regional land transport matter. So I think off the back of this plan change, if approved, that would provide a really strong advocacy point for this council into that process, that you are going to have, you have planned for and there will be over time this projected increase in population in Mokoroa, which would support further public transport services in that space?
I am conscious, councillors, that this is not a rework. We're not today reworking plans from smart growth that have been in place for 20 years about where growth happens. This is about a plan change and enabling what's already been decided is our growth area. So I just highlight that. But I've got also a question from Councillor Daly next.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, has the Minister provided any further context or direction to councils on the enabling housing supply legislation? Obviously, he hasn't told us to stop doing it, or he's going to make significant changes that would make significant changes. Otherwise, we would have heard about it, I guess. But can you provide any further direction that he's given?
We haven't received any further direction.
Can you point me, I'm sorry, I haven't found it yet, but what we decided to do about the vibration setback?
I've done a bit of research on that. If you had particular questions or wanted to know, I think the question was around how many properties may it affect in Mokoroa and Te Puke, and around the costs. So I could give an update on that if that's what you're after.
Yeah, are we pretty much going with the recommendations that be instituted and that would lead to further repercussions?
Sorry, Councillor Daly, you are given, everyone was given an opportunity to put forward disagreements or things they'd like to change in the recommendations. I appreciate you did put forward one element, which I think was probably a bit outside the scope of what we could have agreed, but no one else has put forward any comments. I do recognise that the vibration issue was raised at the workshop, so I think it's probably worth, I'm happy that we hear a little bit more detail about that from Tony, just to get either comfort or some sort of view on whether the hearings panel has got that entirely right. So, Tony, perhaps you can give that information.
Thank you. So in terms of affected numbers in Mokoroa, north and south of the railway, 60 metres either way, you're looking at around about 110 future proposed dwellings that may be affected by this rule. In Te Puke, it's around about 30. It may be a little bit more if people do higher densities, but that's a pretty good estimate for both. In terms of the requirements, it will apply to dwellings, accommodation, education, worship, marae, medical facilities. Buildings would need to be single story. And there's a lot of technical requirements around vibration and hertz, a number of metrics. In terms of costs, just having a look at KiwiRail's evidence, they mentioned at a minimum $3,000 to $4,000 for an initial assessment to work out on what structural requirements there may be. There'll also be a need for a geotech engineer to assess the soil and how that interacts with the vibration assessment, structural engineers. And one of those options they mentioned, which was vibration isolating separation on the pads, may cost $100,000 for one house. So there are some significant costs if that is the solution needed for a particular site. And they also mentioned that the cost may become so high that people simply choose to walk away.
So is what you're suggesting that the cost to mitigate that issue is extremely high, and that if people are aware of it, they walk in with open eyes, and that's just, they can accept that or not, depending on how they want, whether they want to buy the house or not?
That's right. And KiwiRail, they also said that the costs of doing the vibration measures are more than worth the outcome that you get protecting those residents from the effects of vibration. That's their view.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to go with councillor Wickers next.
Cool. Yeah, my question was in regard to this. So is it normal that cost mitigations fall on the affected party and not the party that produces the problem in the first place?
It is relatively normal. There's other rules in the plan about noise mitigation already, where people are required to design their dwellings to protect themselves from the noise from the railway corridor or from the industrial zone. So it is something that is normal, and you need to weigh up, you know, the costs that will fall on the landowners and whether you think that that is acceptable.
So would Kiwi Rail as a business take any responsibility for and be looking at ways that they can mitigate noise and vibration?
They may have their own standards that they meet for that purpose, but in the context of this submission, they are trying to manage the effects on themselves in terms of if people build too close to the railway and they're affected by noise and vibration and they start to complain about the railway and it may constrain that use for them. I'd say that's where they're coming from.
It's the old reverse sensitivity, I think. So, yeah. So I've got Councillor Joyce, Councillor Crawford, Councillor Coxhead and Councillor Murray Benj. I'm conscious we're sort of slightly on to round 2 of questions. So if you can keep it brief. Councillor Joyce, please.
It's actually a follow-up, James, to yours. And it's a technical question. Yeah, if you're under the vibration zone or in a noise zone, does that get put on your LIM report so that you know before you buy the property? You know, do we actually, how, because I mean, it's one thing if you buy a property and you know about these things, but we don't, it could well be that people buy a property and then find out they're going to put $100,000 dampers on their house. So technically, do they find out beforehand through the LIM report?
The LIM report only needs to specify a number of things in accordance with the Lagoima Act. But generally, you don't need to put something in a LIM if it's already apparent in the district plan. So, and the district plan maps are provided and a reference to the district plan is provided, but doesn't necessarily specifically tell them every problem they may
In the
find.
vibration zone.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would suggest that if you buy a place within a few metres of a railway, you should know. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Crawford.
Yeah, so this rule will only apply for new development because, you know, like Grant pointed out in Te Puke about the houses, they're already close to the railway line. Is that correct? And then if this does become, and if it does become something that Kiwi Rail are wanting to enforce, is there going to be any legal requirement if somebody improves the property that they have to comply with it?
Yeah, so the way the rule is drafted, it would apply to any new buildings or additions to buildings. So you can assume that would capture an extra bedroom, for example. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Coxhead.
Just based on conversations I've had and largely Aomakaroa residents, my belief is that people in the community, like existing residents of Aomakaroa and potentially Te Puke, I can't speak to that so much, are not aware that Plan Change 92, the extent to which it affects a very large portion of both townships, we'll call them. I understand there were community meetings, and I think, I'm not sure if they were held by the IHP or not, or with if they were council, but of course it was a fait accompli at this point that Plan Change 92 would proceed. So I'm just interested, was there big attendance at these meetings? Did many people come along and discuss this or not?
Yes. There was in the Mokra, there was a lot of people there. What's a lot? A room full of people.
Largely, you know, roughly.
Maybe I'll let Tony answer more fully, but I think to suggest that this process is somehow unknown or that people aren't aware, I don't think that's sustainable. There will always be people who aren't aware. That's just life. But I think this has been quite a high-profile situation from coming down from government, us doing our consultation, and all the coverage in the paper it's had in between. But
That's
Tony,
not what
would you
I've
like to
heard.
comment further on that?
Yeah, so when the government announced the MDRS, we did have a very short time frame to meet with people again, and we did have those meetings. I attended 3 or 4 out there, and I remember that may have been between 50 and 100 people on some days. But also, just as a reminder, we started this plan change on our own accord a number of years ago, I'd say in around about 2018. So there's been a number of meetings with the community in Mokoroa over that time that discussed the structured plan, and similar rules we're already thinking about. So in that sense, there have been a number of opportunities, but you're right, there were fewer opportunities when we started to introduce the MDRS. At that, we had about 6 months to prepare a plan change.
Understand.
Okay, Councillor Murray-Benj.
I know Clearwater really, really well. I know the people who developed it. I know the people who live there. Why did and the quality of that development, why did the hearings panel use Clearwater as, what purpose was that for?
Sorry, Councillor Murray-Benj, what are you referring to? I'm not aware of what you're
It
referencing.
refers to Clearwater in the lead up to the decision, and it implies that that was a guiding to the hearings panel. And it's an area out of Christchurch, just north, and it's absolutely superb. Built around a golf course, it's intensively developed, but great slopes down to the water. It's just superb and very high quality development. Why was that used? Can you tell me, Tony?
The reference to Clearwater in the recommendation was around case law, and it was seeking to draw out and make clear at the start around what could be considered and what couldn't be considered as part of the plan change. So because it's RMA case law, they made reference to it. Because it is case law that has gone through the courts on previous planning decisions, they made reference to that to draw out the point around what could be considered as part of this plan change and what couldn't be. Yeah.
Okay, looks like the end of the questions. Did you have another question, Deputy Mayor? No, okay. So I think we're going to move, Councillor Daly.
Yeah, thanks. I did have a second question.
Go on.
In relation to Richard Cole's submission this morning, was that, why did he feel the need to come and make that additional submission this morning, and was that encompassed in his original submission?
That's what he's paid to do to represent his clients, so I think that's, yeah.
So he came in, yes, to further convey where his client was with their submission. And he made a number of submission points, and the matter that was raised was due to his client having land ownership in that area, and it was on that basis that he wanted to come in, and particularly picking up on the fact that that industrial zoning has changed over in the recommendation that was made.
I mean, I did. I mean, you made some good points with regards to the suitability of the site for that, and I'm just wondering. I know we've got the possibility to revisit that in the future with our district plan review, but it does seem that this is a great opportunity to actually move that forward at this stage without a whole lot of extra submissions or going through another consultation process. And I'm not sure that there was a whole lot of opposition to it, apart from maybe those immediately affected.
Councillor Dell, I think it's worth pointing out that in the submission that was presented, or the letter, it talks about the land being suitable for smaller and light industrial activities of warehousing. Now, we've heard today that part of the problem is that we have no ability to control that, in that it could be heavy industrial that gets put there instead. And so that would be pretty detrimental, I would suggest, to the residents nearby. And whereas light industrial might be a nice option. If it turns into a heavy industrial, then that could lead to much bigger issues. Would
Yeah,
that be
I did
correct,
hear
Natalie?
that comment, and I was just wondering, from the staff, do you agree that we have got no opportunity, we don't have any control over what industry is built in that area under the proposal?
We've had a look at this as well. So the panel was concerned about the heavy industry and felt they didn't have scope to resolve that through the plan change. We wonder whether that's the case or not. There's already rules in the district plan around light industrial. They apply to an area of land on the eastern side of Mokoroa Road. Essentially what it does, the land is still zoned industrial. The planning maps will mark it as light industrial. There's some subtle differences in the rules. Industry would not be a permitted activity in a light industrial area. It would default to needing a resource consent. And that captures, like I said before, manufacturing, processing, packaging, dismantling or workshops. So if you were minded to want to challenge that decision, you could perhaps, or the recommendation, you could perhaps try and incorporate those rules into that area of Francis Road. That is an option. You'd still have a number of permitted activities, building and construction, wholesalers, commercial services, takeaways, service stations, medical facilities, vets, emergency services would be permitted in that area, just not heavy industry.
I mean, and that's a great explanation, and I'm just wondering why the panel jumped straight from industrial to future urban instead of considering that option.
Natalie, can you confirm which way, what happened? So I'd like I'm inviting Natalie to explain what happened with that process.
Yeah. So I think that the panel took on board the points that were made by submitters, considered the matters that council brought to the table insofar as seeking to resolve some of those concerns. So there were actually changes that were made to the provisions and to some of the structure planning in that area, and ultimately felt that there weren't sufficient change there to adequately deal with that issue between that interface of medium density and residential and industrial in that particular location. So I think that was really what the panel were weighing up and what they considered in reaching that recommendation.
Yeah. And just with a broader perspective, I'd also just like to highlight that future industrial, the future industrial lands study has been considered for the, let's say, the wider Omokura area, and so there are initial thoughts about where those might go. So it's not like there would be no industrial in that area ever, in the wider Omokura area, should you say. Okay. Right, I think that's the end of the questions. So what I was going to do, I was going to take the recommendations in parts, just because there's a few different aspects to consider here. So I'll look for a mover and seconder for recommendation 1, which is that we receive the reports. Councillor Crawford? Sorry, we're on page 88, 89, one of those. Yep, 89 it is, yep. So recommendation 1, that it be received. Councillor Crawford, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Sol, put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Recommendation 2, that it's of low significance according to the significance and engagement policy. I'll move and second it, please. Councillor Henry, I'll second it. Put the motion.
Can I talk to that?
Oh, please do.
Right, here's my opportunity to talk to you after we've had all these questions. We had the opportunity today to accept or reject this. I am going to reject items 2, 3 and 4 firmly and record it on that I'm totally opposed to the conclusions that they've come to allow 4,905 dwellings to be built on Mokoroa on the conjecture of a temporary roundabout, allowing for retirement villages.
Sorry, Councillor Thwaites,
No,
this is about low significance.
Yeah,
We'll
okay,
debate
well,
the other
okay.
ones later, okay?
I'm trying to get to the point that there's a whole lot of points that this is massive significance. Because if I was going to speak to the whole lot and thing, the under collection of FinCos as set out in this is of massive significance. Now, it's not going to be debated here today because that's an upcoming event, but I've seen some discussion papers where we're going to shift a significant portion of water and stormwater fees onto the general rate, effectively subsidising development. The retirement villages in this is getting away with blue murder. So you call this low significance. I would say this would be the most significant decision we're going to make, barring adopting. So I'm certainly going to speak against it. So if you're going to let me speak to each of these as we go down, if you're going to do them one by one, I will further elaborate on my concerns. But I'm going to speak against saying that this is of low significance, because it's not.
Okay, so I just confirm, it was moved by Councillor Henry. I seconded it. And so would you like to move an amendment that it's a different significance?
This is of high significance. I'd move that amendment.
Okay, debate. So to speak to that again.
Well, you've put on, but it's not really against policy. I mean, it is against the policy, but the underlying implications of this are massive. So that's where my significance comes from. It hasn't been unfolded in this document today, but it might in coming months, and then residents will really get a feel of what's coming up the lift.
Please.
Sorry, I'm aware that there are certain rules around different levels of significance. So if we go to high significance, can someone from the staff please advise what that would mean in terms of consultation?
Okay,
because I realise it triggers certain processes.
Thank you, Your Worship. This feels a little bit deja vu-ish, this conversation around significance. But nonetheless, I think what I'd like to do is to draw councillors' attention to the assessment that's included in the report and the fundamental rationale for why the conclusion is that the decision you're being invited to make, or the series of decisions you're being invited to make today are low, is because there has been a very substantive process already under the Resource Management Act, which has been completely transparent and has enabled a very robust and rigorous hearings process. I acknowledge the point that Councillor Thwaites has made around consequential implications, but with respect, that's not the remit for the decision you're being invited to make today. This is a regulatory decision that you're being invited to make about the district plan and making operative a plan change. If there are consequential implications, particularly in terms of financial contributions, I would suggest that that is a matter that ought to be raised through a long-term plan process.
So my question remains, if we change this to high significance, what change in processes, council processes, will that trigger, please, if any?
Thank you, Councillor Joyce. I didn't address that particular question. And I draw your attention to the fact that this is a legislatively prescribed process. So there isn't, if you were to draw a conclusion that this was high, the enabling housing the medium density legislation does not provide for a further round of consultation on the recommendations. In fact, it expressly precludes that, in so much that there is no right of appeal through to the Environment Court.
So to make sure I'm clear, if we can't go high significance because we would trigger a process that would be against the law, the legislation. Can I ask two more questions, because this is important? If we do medium significance, that would not trigger those extra processes. Am I correct?
I guess my question to councillors is what are you wanting to achieve by changing the assessment of significance? Because if they are more consequential, if they are more related to matters of financial contribution policy, then my recommendation would be to debate that through your long-term plan.
Right. I guess it's a technical question though. If it's medium significance, does that trigger any more processes? I know high significance does, and you've explained that, but does medium significance? That's the technical question. I understand it's no, but I may be wrong, so that's why I'm asking.
I withdraw my amendment. If anyone else wants to move it, they can, but I'll withdraw.
That's another way of putting it. Thanks, Tom.
Okay. Are you comfortable with that, Councillor Mowbray?
No, sir, but I have to go along with it.
Okay, I suspect there's better, if you have opposition, there might be a better opportunity rather than doing the significance one. So with that withdrawn, that it's low significance has been moved by Councillor Henry, seconded by me. I hope there's no further debate because this was meant to be quite a straightforward one. So I shall put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? I've put the motion. Okay, so all those in favour, please say aye. Against? So can we have a show of hands then? All those in favour, which is for low significance. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that is lost. Oh, sorry. All those against, sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Can we have hands up, not sort of down by... Right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Was it seriously 5 all? I think this is... Did someone not vote? Okay, can we please do this again? Did anyone abstain? Grant abstained. Okay. So with 5 all and 1 abstention, it's the first one in my triennium, it comes to a casting vote. And I think that's not actually relevant, but in this case, I will exercise my casting vote to remain at low significance because the significant element of decision making is coming up, and I don't think this particular resolution has a great deal of flow on in this situation. So with that, I'll declare it carried. No, it's gone. It's gone. No, but I'd already put the motion. Okay. Okay. Whew. So we'll move on to... Okay. Right. So recommendation 3, which is that Council accepts the recommendations of the Independent Hearings Panel for Plan Change 92 and be publicly notified, etc. So do I have a mover and seconder for this one, please? Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour, Councillor Crawford. Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour, would you like to speak to your...
Yeah, I would like to say a bit to this. So obviously, if I move this, I'm planning to vote for it, but I have to say that it is with mixed feelings that I do that. I guess I acknowledge first all the work that staff have done in regard to this. And I believe it must have been a very frustrating process for you, but I must commend you for the very professional way you've handled yourselves, because that hasn't been particularly apparent. But I can't imagine it being anything other than frustrating to have been working to a process and then to have had another process imposed from on high is not particularly helpful. notwithstanding, I think that some of the principles behind what central government has been trying to achieve have been helpful. In regard to this plan, I believe some of the detail in it is less than perfect. But I do believe that they will be able to be, using Natalie's word, in regard to spatial plan, picked up, I think, in the future is the correct term. And my understanding is, perhaps in regard to one of Rodney's questions, that other processes such as the spatial plan or plan changes will not override this, but will be additional to and picked up through those processes. And I think that it's very important that we retain the ability to react to those changes and proposals and make our own decisions. I believe we live or are operating in a very risky environment, essentially, where if we let this go to Wellington for the minister to make a decision, it's not clear at this point who their advisors are and what direction they'll be taking from them. And so I think we need to be very cautious about putting our destiny in other people's hands. And so for that reason in particular, I think it's important that we approve this and proceed with it, no matter how reluctant we may be. So I'll be supporting it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour. I now recognise Councillor Thwaites.
Right, I will be voting against this recommendation. I don't accept these recommendations, as I mentioned briefly before, to allow 4,905 residential units, to allow retirement villages to count 4 units to be 1 residential unit within that, plus add in the industrial, plus add in the commercial. That is just totally reckless in conjunction to the whole issue that this district's had for the last 20 years. A single crossing of the Te Puna stream still exists. There are very dangerous intersections at Plumbers Point Road and Barrett Road onto that road. With all that traffic, there is no mention at all to that. So from a roading point of view, I totally reject it. From a financial contributions, the shortfall, we're already starting to see that in the stormwater. To allow the retirement village union throughout the country just get away with absolute murder, I'm just totally against it. Need to start through Local Government New Zealand some sort of campaign back against those. They are making billion-dollar profits at the expense of ratepayers who are looking to subsidise the shortfall in financial contributions. So that will come out further. As far as Francis Road goes, I believe the lack of knowledge on that panel is just so apparent. That should have been a stage 4. There shouldn't have been any consideration of Francis Road until that road has safe access onto Aomakaroa Road. The current intersection there is absolutely lethal. To debate over whether it's industrial, commercial, light industrial, future residential is an absolute fallacy until that road is connected across into Aomakaroa Road. So I believe the panel have made a bad mistake in opening up and even looking at Francis Road. They shouldn't have even considered that given the safety concerns there. So from that point of view, I will be voting. On my final point, to move to industrial right on the doorstep of Aomakaroa. I thought we were trying to build an attractive town there and then potentially going to allow a whole strip of big industrial buildings along State Highway 2 frontage, fronting our settlement that we're building. So I believe they've been woefully inadequate and haven't considered local ability at all, but mainly the roading issue. And if it has to go to the minister, good. He can make it alongside with TNL2 when he makes the same decision about allowing 4,905 dwellings to exist there on a temporary roundabout. So I think I've said enough today. I'll be voting against the next 2 as well, but I don't need to speak anymore.
Okay, Councillor Joyce.
Thank you to the staff in a difficult situation and the commissioners. And the March 1 deadline under legislation puts this council between a rock and a hard place. And yeah, we have to consider this today. But I guess my first question before was my key one. Where in the report did the commissioners consider overall whether this is a good idea? And the answer is, well, they didn't because they couldn't. And that's, thank you, Tony, for that answer. It's exactly true. And it comes through in this very detailed report that they've looked at all the issues around it, but they haven't been able to, because it was in legislation, look at whether this is a good idea. we don't actually know if this is a good plan because we haven't considered overall whether it is a good plan. We need more housing and we need intensification and we need different housing types. You know, there's a market there for people who don't like gardening that want, you know, pocket stamp places. Affordability is important. You can't do that. Everybody has a quarter acre paradise. And I acknowledge that Mokoroa and Te Puke are our growth areas. You know, we need to try different things in these areas. But we don't actually know if this is the best way to do it because we haven't actually considered whether this is the best way to do it because it was handed down from on high. I am concerned about the fire service versus the district plan. If the fire brigade says they can't get to your house, then I actually take that really seriously. We already have that problem in Katikati, where actually the fire brigade managed to get to someone who was dying and they couldn't have saved him anyway, but then they couldn't get their fire engines out. And that's a pretty new subdivision in Katikati. I am very concerned about the lack across the council and Smart Growth that, you know, we're saying things like, well, you know, build it and the public transport will come. That is not a plan. That is not a plan. You know, I realise it's beyond the scope of the commissioners, but as a council, if we're going to build housing that is dependent on a good public transport plan, we better have a plan for that public transport when we do it, and not just say, oh, TNL might deliver. That is not a plan. We've done all this work, and it has been a great deal of work, and there has been a cost to ratepayers at the council. There's no doubt about that. But to carry on because a lot of work's been done is a very short-term argument. I mean, that's the basis the lemmings heading over the cliff. Well, the guy in front knows what he's doing, so yeah, I'll just follow. No, we've got to, this is a big decision. This is a big decision for Te Puke. It's a big decision for Mokoroa. We also heard the argument today, let's leave it to the developers. They won't do this because it won't make money. Well, I'm sorry. You've got amazing faith in developers. You know, some of them don't have perfect vision about what's good for them and good for even for the town they're going in. You know, we have a district plan because we do not leave it to the market. If we left it to the market, and I've lived in countries where it's pretty much left to the market, you know, India, I've spent a lot of time in Thailand, it's not a good outcome. That's why we have a district plan. So our district plan better be good. And it needs constant improvement. If we allow medium density housing on, say, the ridges of Mokoroa, and this is a blanket, pretty much a blanket ruling, then just wait for the reaction from the people whose houses are shaded, you know, and it's not, they don't get a say. I absolutely understand we're between a rock and a hard place on the timing and waiting on government to clarify what it wants to do. Didn't help that this party in government was actually in favour of it before the election, so it's very muddy waters. I don't think we should be in the business of picking this apart clause by clause. I mean, that's why we have commissioners and they've spent a lot of time on this. But staff have given us a path forward. And that is if we reject it, then it will go to a minister. And the worst he can do is say yes, you know, and the better option would be to say, no, let's wait. You can wait until it's optional and let's come up with a better plan. You know, I get it, we need intensification. We had our own plan. We're working on it when the legislation came over the top. Let's get back to a local plan. And the only way to do that without getting stuck in this process is to say no and then rely on the minister to actually tell us what happens next. The last thing I'd say is when even the person moving this has doubts, has mixed feelings, that should all give us pause, right? You know, I hear what you're saying, Deputy Mayor, but, you know, if in doubt, to push on, to me, is not the way forward on a major decision for the people of Te Puke and the people of Mokoroa. You know, let's try for a better path. And I realise that's extra work and I realise that means some uncertainty, but I don't see this as a solution, so I'll be voting against this clause.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Joyce. Councillor Sol.
Thank you, sir. First comment, I guess, is about putting this in the hands of somebody else. Well, basically, we already have. We've got commissioners, and here we're being asked to either accept, or we're being asked to accept their report. So we've put it in their hands already. So to me, that's one part. Number two, sir, I do not like the fact that, unfortunately, we are operating with the terms of reference, etc., for the commissioners, with an act that is still in place, correct, but potentially likely to find itself changed maybe in some ways, and we're saying we don't know where this will go. Okay, that's true, but to me, it's putting us in a situation that's quite difficult now to actually live with, I believe. So I actually have no issue about it going to the minister. In fact, we've already heard that we haven't had any direction. Nobody's had any direction, we presume, as to where the government are going at present. So I have no issue to putting it in their hands and putting them on the spot to actually start giving us the direction for everybody. Somebody's got to come up front somewhere and make some decisions. The other and last point, sir, and this is why I am opposed to it, is the cost to the ratepayer is it's just crazy at present. I mean, there's just no way we can move with this. So to me, it's not a good thing to accept. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zoll. I'm going to invite Rachel to say a few words.
Thank you, Your Worship. Essentially, what I'd like to remind councillors of is the fact that Omokoroa Stage 3, and indeed all of the Omokoroa Peninsula, has been signalled as a growth area well before the gestation of smart growth. So for many, many years. In fact, this council has made investment decisions in relation to wastewater reticulation on the assumption that Omokoroa would at least grow to a population of 12,000 at some point in the future. You heard Tony mention earlier in the discussion the fact that putting aside the MDRS, and I wonder whether the medium density residential standards and that legislation is clouding consideration of the fact that planning for Stage 3 of Omokoroa has been in progress for many, many years, since at least 2017. And during that time, and both Tony and I have been here, and many of the elected members around this table since that time, there have been several iterations of community engagement, very detailed conceptual planning with the existing Omokoroa community over those years. I do appreciate that the medium density residential standards sort of scuppered those plans, but we were well advanced in terms of bringing you a plan change to open up for development Omokoroa Stage 3. Indeed, many of our local developers have made investment decisions and purchased land in anticipation of Omokoroa Stage 3 being rezoned and open for development imminently. In fact, according to them, we are probably 2 to 3 years behind their planning timetable. That has caused some concerns for our consent processing team, who have had to process land use consents and subdivision consents before we've actually rezoned that land. And perhaps the last thing that I'd like to remind councillors about is the fact that we have had government funding for the interim roundabout. I certainly appreciate the comments that have been raised by Councillor Thwaites in terms of the long-term adequacy of that infrastructure. But the fundamental basis of that decision by the Crown was to enable Stage 3 to be opened up for housing. So this is a important decision for this council, not only in terms of the Omokoroa community, but also in terms of its commitment to the Urban Growth Partnership, of which the Crown is a member, to opening up land for housing, noting that we have a significant housing crisis across the sub-region.
Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. I now go to Councillor Coxhead.
Thank you, Rachel. I will still be voting against this as well. I take on board what you're saying, and I mean, I do want to see more housing, and I believe, particularly Aomokoroa to this stage, has developed at a very good standard and a very high quality, and I would like to see that continue. I'm not confident under this is what will roll out. So for that reason and the reason of roading, public transport, I am concerned, and I will be voting against this today.
Sorry for a moment. Councillor Henry, please.
I am too very concerned with what Councillor Thwaites has brought up today, because, and I see our GM has moved out of the room, because for a long time I have been concerned about what we collect from our growth, and I don't think we actually collect. In fact, I'm 100% sure we don't actually collect the money that we should be getting from our growth. So, and what you just said then before, Rachel, didn't, and I know it's only a little issue here. The guy who came in here to speak for some other person, they too perhaps could have come to you and asked if they could pre-organise their industrial development that they talked about that they can no longer do beforehand, and then we would have had to allow them to do it because it was already started. So it does concern me about pre-doing stuff before it's done. You know, we get rubbish for those sorts of decision makings. So I can understand why you're doing it, but I mean, those are the sort of things we get beaten over the head over as we go about the streets. So I am not, I'm really upset to hear that, and if that's true, and Adele's not here, but if we are not going to be able to collect our Fincos from this, and the fact that we've only got the TNL to Loop Road at the moment, how secure is the TNL to go to this new development, all that traffic coming back? I'm worried. I don't think it's a smart move. I don't think it's a wise choice for our region. Today, NZTA told us, well, one employee told us at Regional Council that they were not going to set the light on that crossing up by coming into Bethlehem there for the bikes to go across. Well, that is going now. And we have another hold up on State Highway 2 coming into town because the TNL's not there, and we've got that happening. It stopped 3 times this morning from Tapuna to there. When I got up, I could see there's another stop because another bike was going across. So, you know, if we're going to be causing more bedlam with no roundabout there, I just don't think it's the right thing to do.
Thank you, Councillor Henry. I'm just going to say a few words at this point. I'm speaking in favour of the motion. We have to accept the independent hearings panel has spent months considering all these issues. And for us to come in over the top and just say, oh no, that it's all wrong, we have to think very carefully about doing that. If we send to the minister, we lose control and a lot of time. And what we need to remember is that this development is happening anyway. This plan change puts in place essential parameters to control that. If you vote against this in the belief that you'll somehow stop growth, fix the traffic, not make the traffic worse, you won't. It is happening anyway. And there are firm plans to, in the short to medium term, fix those issues. TNL2 is at number 2 on our regional land transport plan. We have had indications from central government that they look favourably on progressing that, but we'll see. I know that's been, I take the point about planning things like this and not getting it. It'd be nice if it was built up front, but that's just not how the world works, it seems. I think there are significant implications if we say no to this. We will get worse development. We'll get the development that will be permitted by resource consent, not an overall plan, we won't be getting better outcomes. So I think we need to think very carefully about this, and I think there's a lot of wider issues talking about State Highway 2 and growth in general. That is not really about what we're talking about today. So to bring those in now when there's other avenues to the Regional Transport Committee or Smart Growth to discuss those and agree those, I think that's in my view quite wrong. I would also like to invite Rachel to talk about implications, because she may know a little bit more than I do about implications if we vote against this.
Thank you, Worship. And I think I did allude, albeit broadly, to what the implications might be of a general decision by council to reject in their entirety the recommendations of the panel. Firstly, just having taken some advice from my colleague next to me, if that is ultimately where council is heading today, I would perhaps advise that this matter lie on the table, because I think we would need to take some more advice. I'm not sure whether or not, certainly the legislation provides that if you are intending to reject in entirety the recommendations, you have an obligation to consider an alternative to put to the minister. So there is a procedural element to this decision-making process today that we haven't contemplated, that we would need to take some advice on. But I think more particularly for today is the commercial risk that a lot of our developers have entered into on the assumption that ultimately we will be rezoning stage 3 for development, not to mention the contractual risk of this council having received funding from Kāinga Ora for the purposes of enabling housing within stage 3. Accordingly, I ask council to bear those risks in mind in reaching a decision today.
Thank you, Rachel. I now recognise Councillor Murray Benge to speak.
Thank you. I appreciated Rachel's comments about the transport links, because although we say that NZTA doesn't matter, we had an agreement years ago that the state highway from Bethlehem through to Amakoroa would be 4-laned by 2015. And here we have the NZTA making submissions to this form and telling us that the intersection will not be upgraded until 2048. Well, when we did the Minden development, we had the NZTA telling us that we couldn't do as much as we would like to because the state highway couldn't cope with it. So I think the Minister of Transport, who's the Minister of Local Government, has got a role to play in this. But the one thing that really bugged me, and on all the years that I've been in local government, I have never, ever, ever seen maps that show people living in slithers of sections and told that they can't have garages, they don't need to have garages, they don't need to have carports, they don't need to have off-street parking, that they can all catch a bus or ride a bike. And from that one particularly, this has got to go back to the Minister, because I think there is social planning of the very, very worst. And I cannot believe that independent commissioners would have done this to us. So the fact that we councillors weren't involved at the time, and I'm sorry I couldn't be at the workshop because I couldn't get the sound to work properly on the Zoom meeting, but it has to go back to the Minister. The Minister's got to know that we need more freedom when it comes to making decisions. And the anti-social environment that we will be creating by having these tiny, tiny little sections where you cannot swing a cat, I think is just immoral. And I've been to the last 2 community board meetings at Amakoroa, and the people from Kaimai Views have been there. They're telling us that the street is too narrow. They're telling us that the berms are too narrow. They're telling us that there's no place to park their cars. And so on planning terms, we have got to actually take a serious look and actually demand better from the decision makers who influence what we do in Wellington. And it's time to take the gloves off and tell them what we want for our district and how we cannot cope with the interference that they keep giving to us. Because you get two women who have a good idea and think you don't need to have garages anymore, and it's just not good enough. Because in the geographically challenged area that we live in, people do need their cars. The one thing that every child wants when they're 16 is the freedom to actually own a car. Well, heaven help you if you want to live in a Mokoroa in the future. If these tiny sections where you can't do anything, I just think it's a recipe for social disaster. And if you applied the CIPTED principles, you wouldn't allow it anyway. Sir, I rest my case, but I'm voting against it.
Thank you, Councillor Murray-Benj. Okay, so what we've had is six people speak against the motion. So what I think we'll do, given also what Rachel has said regarding legal risks and so on, I think I will ask Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour if he would like to withdraw his motion, and we vote for it to lie on the table until we've received further advice on ways forward. Okay? And Richard, if you're in agreement, are you both in agreement, Councillor? Okay, Councillor Crawford? Great, okay. So with that, I'd like to have a mover and seconder that this item lies on the table. Can I have a mover? Councillor Daly, Councillor Henry. If there's no further debate on that. That's correct, thank you. No, thank you for noting that. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Okay, hands please. So all those in favour, please raise your hand. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Key hands up, please. Now, there's hands going up and down all over the place. just keep your hand up for the moment, please. Okay, and those against, please. Okay, that's 3 against. So I'll declare that carried. Thank you. We have got one more recommendation, but I think I need a tea break. So we'll just adjourn until 10 to 12 for morning tea. Thank you. So welcome back. As you'll recall, we got through the first three recommendations on page 89, and now we're going to deal with item recommendation number 4, which is the recommendation of the independent hearing panel for the Omokara Active Reserve and confirming the notice of requirement. So Natalie or Rachel, would you like to take that away?
Your Worship, having considered the debate from the last item, it would be staff's recommendation that this matter lie on the table because it is complementary in nature to Plan Change 92.
Thank you. In which case, I think that is probably sensible advice. So I shall move that it lies on the table alongside recommendation 3. Seconded, Councillor Joyce. I shall put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Right, so now we'll move on to item 12.4, Mayor's Report to Council on page 677. Right, having flicked all those pages, does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask on that one? Councillor Murray-Bench.
Did you get any sleep?
Yeah, I had a nice summer holiday, thank you very much, yes. There's no more. I'm happy to move my report. Is there a seconder? Councillor Sol. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. So with that, there is no information receipt, and we'll move to the confidential section. I'll call for a mover and seconder to exclude the public, please. Councillor Crawford, Councillor Murray-Benj. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried.